If you're watching this Catholic YouTube channel, chances are you consume a lot of Catholic content online, and so you know a bit about what's going on in the wider church, including that this year, 2025, is a Jubilee year of hope, called for by Pope Francis not long before his death. So what is a Jubilee year? We have them every 25 years in the church, and there's a time of great celebration, there's pilgrimage, and there's wonderful events throughout the church. But the Jubilee goes all the way back to the book of Leviticus. It's a pre-Christian concept. It goes back to Leviticus, where God, through Moses, tells the people that every 50 years, 7 times 7 years, an extra year on top, there is to be a Jubilee year in which land is left to lie more fallow, so the land can regenerate. And even more importantly, there is a social and an economic reset for the whole of society. People are to go back to their own land, and everyone receives their land back again because debts are forgiven. You can buy and sell and trade and rent your land, absolutely, but not forever. Everything resets. So if you are in debt, your debt is forgiven. If you've sold or rented your land out, it resets and comes back to you. And even Leviticus even spells out that if you are selling land, you must calculate, well, how many years is it until the next Jubilee year, till the next reset? Because you're selling land not permanently, but only for that limited amount of time. It brings the price down because you know you're effectively only leasing it for a time. And that has the effect of allowing no one to get so mired in long-term intergenerational poverty, being dragged down by debt that they and their children can never repay. But neither does it allow anybody to amass so much wealth that they can simply accumulate wealth, pass it on to the next generation, who in turn become wealthier again, and a whole different class, a superior class in a society arises. But today we do see that absolutely, don't we? We see the billionaires of our world at the very top end and many, many multimillionaires beneath them who have so much wealth, have accumulated a disproportionate, unfair amount of wealth. No matter how hard they've worked, how clever they've been, no one needs that much money or deserves that much money. And it comes at the cost of many, many people at the bottom who are constantly struggling to survive, living paycheck to paycheck. And that inequity in society brings about hostility. It brings about a lack of peace, and often ends up in violent overthrow and revolution. Think French Revolution, among others. So this is clearly not how God wants us to live. The Jubilee year has something to offer us, and Jesus kind of addresses the same thing in the gospel tonight. It begins with a question about money. Someone asked Jesus to intervene to give him a share of his inheritance, and Jesus addresses it, and I'll come back to his direct answer later. But he goes on, as Jesus often does, to use that as a jumping off point to give a parable about avarice, which we more often call greed. And he creates the character of a wealthy farmer who is trying to circumvent and get around the Jubilee provisions. He's already rich, we hear that, and he's had a great bumper crop, so he's going to build bigger barns and bigger storehouses to save up. He wants to amass his wealth and hold on to it. And we hear the smugness in the words Jesus puts on his lips. You say to yourself, my soul, you have good things for many years to come, so sit back and relax and eat, drink, and be merry effectively, that you are secure for many years to come. And the sting in that parable, of course, is that Jesus says, that very night the demand is made for that man's soul, and all his wealth did not buy him security or long life at all. This kind of fits in with the broader theme of so much of Jesus' teaching, that wealth and clinging to wealth, whether it's ill-gotten gains or by hard work, but no matter how we get it, if we cling to our wealth as our security, it means we're not clinging to God. And that's always the end point for Jesus, that we rely on God. We trust in God. And that has many different nuances of what trusting in God might look like in our lives. But we see disproportionately that wealth moves us away from that. We see it at the individual level, but also at the communal level. Societies, as they get richer, often become less religious and less spiritual. And we might look at that with a cynical eye and say, well, poor people got nothing else to trust in, so of course they trust in God. But we can look at the other way and say, the poor, those who actually need to rely on their neighbours, those who live with a little bit of vulnerability and actually have to trust in God, they're living the real way. And those who are rich are the ones with the blinders on. And it's those blinders Jesus seeks to take off with that very challenging parable tonight. So we actually, I don't think we can simply click our fingers and recreate the grand reset which the Jubilee is in our society. But governments do have a chance to use taxation mechanisms, among others, to try to even out the differences in wealth and poverty. Most recently, our federal government attempted to bring in an additional tax on superannuation balances over $3 million. Now that's I don't know about you, but that's not my superannuation balance. Not many of us would have that much. But of course, those who were in that very top bracket, who have many, many millions in their super, of course, railed saying, that's not fair, why should we be taxed on this? But the reason is that superannuation was brought in compulsory in Australia 20, 30 years ago now, as a mechanism to allow people to save up for their retirement, to live out their retirement in modest comfort. It was never meant to be a vehicle to allow people to accumulate great wealth, tax-free or low tax, park money in there, and then pass it on to their children. It was never meant to be a mechanism of intergenerational wealth, because that kind of extreme wealth, and that intergenerational wealth, is what takes us away from our trust in God. And so progressive tax policies, whether it be an inheritance tax, which is never popular, or a capital gains tax, or this proposed, I guess it's a wealth tax on superannuation, which will probably come back again. These, I think, in my opinion, are good things. They're things which help to even our society out. So no one becomes too rich, which is not just not good for the poor, it's not good for them either. And that's where the word avarice, greed, comes in, that clinging to and being obsessed by our wealth. So I've often quoted John D. Rockefeller, American billionaire, who when asked, how much money do you need to be happy? He said, just a little bit more. But of course, that would always be the answer, no matter how much you have. So what can we do? Well, I guess the question which Jesus asked was about inheritance, saying, please tell my brother to share the inheritance with me. And sadly, that's something I see many people struggle with. I've had so many people come to me over many years with conflict in their family because of the division of the inheritance from their parents. So adult children like myself, our age, tend to be the ones inheriting from our parents. And so families who have been, at least seemingly be strong, can often be blown apart over this money. And so my comment to people is often when there's disagreement and strife about the inheritance, say, do you really need this? Could you let go? Could you let go, even though it might be your rightful share, could you let go of it and have your family instead? Because you might be able to get your inheritance, or you might have a relationship with your siblings. You might not be able to have both. Which one do you really want? And I guess I haven't had that experience with an inheritance, but a few years ago, I was struggling with both Optus and Virgin Airlines. Optus had cut my phone off for a month, and Virgin had lost my suitcases. Probably neither of those are terribly surprising. So I was kind of going through the complaints process to try to get my money back and get recompense. And so I was online. I was on hold to phones for an hour. We get put through to someone finally who had to put you through to someone else who put you on hold or dropped out. And I was taking notes and emailing and going round and round the circle, getting really, really worked up over $50 and $200. And in the end, I had to think, do I really need this? Is it worth me chasing this? And I came to the conclusion, no, just let it go. And I know in doing so, I lost. I'm sure big companies actually, in some extent, have deliberately complex processes to stop people claiming from them, and which means they won, I lost. But can I bear with that? Yeah, I can bear with that. And as soon as I let go of those few $100s, it brought me so much peace. And I think we need to find the ways to actually arrive at peace rather than clinging to money, whether it's that kind of process, whether it's our inheritance, whether it's been a bit less obsessed with the stock market, and whether my portfolio has gone up or down, or interest rates or house prices. Many people are living on these things, looking at it every day, being consumed by these things which are the indicators ultimately of greed. We can justify it, I'm sure, in many ways, but it tends to cultivate a greed in our hearts. Let's move away from that. Let's celebrate this Jubilee year, but hear the deeper call it is to a more just society. And that more just society will be one in which everyone has enough and nobody has too much.